Hi, my name is Trina Greene Brown. I'm the founder and executive director of Parenting for Liberation. And for this Power Talk, I want to speak to the importance of keeping Black families together through policy change. Before I get started, I want to make sure that this Power Talk is grounded in reproductive justice pillars. So, shout out to the four mothers of the reproductive justice movement. On my screen, I have Loretta Ross and Monica Simpson of Sister Song. And the pillar that this talk is really rooted in is the last pillar, which is around our right to raise and parent children in safe and sustainable communities. And those communities have to be communities that are resourced, that is violence free, that is not over policed, and also that doesn't involve a lot of CPS coming in and taking our children away. And so that's the institution that we're going to be talking about today, the CPS Welfare System, and how it has been taking Black children away from their families, and how America has been taking Black children away from their families since our arrival in this country. Yeah. And so in January 2019, when there was a surgence of the hashtag keeping families together when dealing with the separation of families at the borders, Black families really came and made a clarion call to hold America accountable for its long legacy of forced removals of Black children and also Indigenous children who were forced removed from their families since the inception of this country. Yes? And so that's back then. And then let's look at the statistics now. On any given day, there are over 400,000 children in the United States child welfare system, which we should start calling the child welfare industrial complex. Similar to the prison industrial complex, the child welfare industrial complex is a multi-billion-dollar government apparatus that regulates the lives of millions of people through intrusive investigations and monitoring and surveillance and forcibly removing children from their families to be placed in foster care, group homes, and often not even with family or kin. So when we're talking about keeping families together in the United States, Black folks are intentionally talking about the ways that this system, this complex, has intentionally ripped families apart in disproportionate numbers. Let's look at the numbers for Black families. Okay, so let's look at the numbers locally here in Los Angeles. So in LA County's Department of Children and Family Services, which is one of the largest national public child welfare agencies, there are 30,000 children in foster care in LA. Now, while in LA, Black children only make up 7.5% of the Los Angeles population, Black children account for about 28% of children in custody through DCFS. Okay, so you're like, the numbers are high, Trina. We get it. What can we do about it? And that's the same question that me and my team of fellows with the Women's Policy Institute came together and wrapped our heads around. And we began to really focus and zero in on the decision-making process of when a child is decided to be removed from their home and placed in foster care. And we really interrogated that process. And we learned about this innovative practice that was being piloted in New York and Nassau County called the blind removals. And so we put together a proposal and drafted and co-sponsored a policy that is now in California State Legislature AB 656, which is Equity in Childhood Interventions. AB 656 addresses the racial disparities and the implicit bias that goes into the decision-making process to remove children from their families. It does that by redacting any demographic information that can be used against a family when making a decision. So that information could be race, name, address, zip code, language. All of these things have been used against families in the decision-making process because implicit bias comes into play. And we know that implicit bias happens just by looking at someone's name on a paper because of all of the data that we've heard about in job applications. If your name on your resume reads ethnic or Black, you're less likely to get a job interview. Similarly, if your name reads or information reads Black or person of color, your child may be more likely to be removed from you. We redact this information. We believe, this is our hypothesis, that it could lower the rates. And the reason why we have that hypothesis is because this has been piloted in New York in a county, Nassau County. And when they did the blind removal process, before they began this process, they were removing Black children at 55%. And once they implemented this process, the rates went down from 55% of removals of Black children to 29% of removals of Black children. Now, again, we're asking for this to be piloted here in the state of California. We're not asking for it to be a mandate because we need to evaluate it. We need to test it and see if this policy, if this approach, if this strategy will work in our communities. And we want to shout out LA County, who has been in the process of looking into this. Shout out to Holly Mitchell, who has been an advocate and a champion for really getting at the root causes of racial discrimination and racial bias that lives in the child welfare system. So what can you do? Well, our call to action is that you, when the policy comes up for vote, which is coming in early 2022, that you look into AB 656. You call your legislators when it's time to vote and ask them to vote yes on this policy. You also can sign on, if you're an organization, you can sign on letters of support for us. Those will be coming out soon. And last but not least, if you are a person who has experienced child separation or have experienced racial discrimination within DCFS, please share your story, because this needs to be shared. We need more folks to know about the ways that the system is impacting our communities, and we need to utilize our voice as Black parents to speak up, to advocate, to hold the system accountable, and make sure that Black families actually stay together. Here's some information how you can reach out to me and my organization, Parenting for Liberation, for more information.